Construction data. How is digital technology transforming the built environment? Today on Dave Cooper Live, where we are bringing you the people, the products, and the processes, helping us all to build it better. So today we please welcome Jaimie Johnston, MBE, Director, Head of Global Systems at Bryden Wood. This is the first of a two-part series on how digital technology and data is transforming the way we design, build, and deliver products around the world. In theory and in practice, how are the digital and physical worlds converging? How is digital technology enabling the global delivery and growth of prefabrication and modular construction? Around the world, construction technology is dissolving the silos, barricading construction platforms. By creating a global marketplace, how can owners, developers, architects, builders, and mechanical contractors capitalize on the shift in the supply chain? Why are some failing and others expanding? Bryden Wood's vision for industrialized construction brings together a platform's approach to design and construction driven by digital configurators and delivered using new commercial models such as integrated project delivery. Productivity, cost performance, workforce shortages, safety, and the carbon agenda. Regardless of business driver, today we will find out how data is driving the solution. But first, we got to give a huge shout out to our sponsors who are helping us to build it better. We have Stream Logistics. Carson Holmquist and his team are experts in high-stakes freight and the perfect choice for projects with timelines and specific delivery sequences, shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Check them out at streamlogistics.com. Also, a big shout out to CombiLift, the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, an acknowledged leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design services. CombiLift helps you maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of your warehouse and storage facilities. Learn more by visiting their website at combilift.com. And Brave Control Solutions. Let's talk automation, everybody. We're offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction, a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry. Go to thinkbrave.com. That's right, thinkbrave.com. All right, listen, we need to get into this. We got a lot to cover. So why don't we bring on Jaimie Johnston, MBE, Director, Head of Global Systems, Bryden Wood, international company of technologists, architects, engineers, designers, and analysts for a better built environment. Jaimie, what is happening?
Hello there. Hi, Dave. Thanks for inviting me to come on the show.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate you joining us. You know, we had a great opportunity to meet each other at Advancing Prefab a couple weeks back. Had a great show, did some fun live stuff while we were there, but we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of it today, and we're looking forward to it. And before we get started, I want everybody to know this is a two-part series. Part one is virtual. Part two is, that's right, Dave Cooper Live is heading to London. We're going to be in England, and we're going to be with Jaimie live in person at their office. So join us for that, too. That's going to be a week after this week coming up, so we're going to have fun. All right, Jaimie, it's time, man. We want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Don't leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, because we will call your mother, and I guarantee she will come on the show and embarrass you. So lay it out, but you only have 2 minutes to do it. Show's yours.
She definitely will, yeah. I've always had an obsession with the built environment. So when I was a kid, we used to go on family holidays, and everyone else would be admiring the sort of the view and looking at the landscape. I'd think that's quite dull. That's just what happens if no one does anything for billions of years. So I always had a real interest in cities. So whereas everyone else was looking at the landscape, I used to obsess over how cities were designed and built and think that someone physically did that. So I always had this interest in learning how to do that. So I trained as an architect. I'm an architect by background. It's very hard to tell these days. And then as I started getting into it, I started to become more and more interested in how things were manufactured, so aeroplanes and cars and all those sorts of things. And I had a real interest in how to try and drag that into the work that I was doing. So while I was at college, I was called up by Martin Wood, who's one of the co-founders of Bryden Wood. I joined straight out of college. I was employee number one, and I've been with Bryden Wood for 26 years. And I've spent my whole career developing various forms of design for manufacturing assembly or industrialized construction or prefabrication for clients in the public and private sector. And the last 10 years, particularly, I've been working with the UK government to help them adopt building information modeling and then get into this more industrialized construction space. So I've spent at least 10 years now trying to shape the policy context and the market around the UK with varying success, and trying to make the stuff that we do much more mainstream.
You know, Jaimie, with that and trying to make it more mainstream, I mean, you guys, from what I saw at your keynote at Advancing Prefab, is you're not only just using data, but you're using new technology for even the construction process and offsite manufacturing and modularizing, using steel. And I think that's, I mean, kind of where it's headed today in this conversation, is really understanding, you know, how do you take this data-driven approach? How do you do integrated project delivery? And how do you build it better and faster? So why don't we just hop into it and talk about, you know, data in general? You know, what is it? You know, buzzword or catalyst transforming the built environment?
It's definitely changed. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have said it was a buzzword that I think people were using without really understanding it. I'd liken it to, in the early days of building information modeling, or BIM, it was total buzzword. No one really understood BIM, but over time, people started to get a grip of it. And I think we're in that transitional phase. People have used data sort of as a buzzword for a while. I think we're suddenly getting to the point where people are realizing, you know, clients have got quite a lot of historic data about their projects. Contractors have been capturing data for ages. I think we're just getting to the point now where people are realizing, like in every other aspect of their lives, if they can take that data, if they can harness it, turn it into information insight, it will start to show them some of the patterns, some of the things they've always done that haven't worked, some of the things they have done that have worked. And I think people are really starting to leverage it now to drive some of these better ways of working, you know, more collaborative ways of working, and using it to leverage some of these more componentized prefabricated systems. So it's definitely, we're not there yet, but it's definitely transitioning from a buzzword into I would say, a genuine catalyst. We both noticed at Advancing Prefab, virtually every talk mentioned productivity, manufacturing, and data were like the three big themes that seem to come up in every talk.
Why? I'm just personally, why now? Like, you know, this has been being done for years and years in all kinds of successful manufacturing around the world, looking at the data, collecting data. Why do you think it's so prevalent now that it's part of all the conversations happening? Is it because the new generation's coming in? Is it because we're just getting smarter? Or is it because of the lack of the workforce? I mean, what is it?
I think it's a mix of all of these things are starting to coalesce. So there's definitely we've got the first generation of, digital natives that have only ever worked in a very digital way are coming into the industry now. And so they bring with them a kind of expectation that there's a certain amount of digital technology. I think things like building information modeling have been around for long enough now that they're starting to become business as usual. So people have made that cultural shift into using technology and that more collaborative way of working. So you've got technology becoming more commonplace. Culturally, it's sort of becoming more part of the grain of doing things. And we've seen every other aspect of our lives. Data is the thing that drives these massive companies. So everyone knows that, it's gold dust if you can get your hands on this stuff and leverage it. I think now people are starting to proactively try and find out what that means for construction.
So how is the digital and physical environment starting to converge?
So in our minds, they've always been linked. So I think very early on, we realized if you're going to use some form of industrialized construction, there's no point having an incredibly sophisticated form of construction and trying to drive it with 2D PDFs. But also, if we have a sort of generative design workflow, there's no point having this very sophisticated digital workflow and then turning it into, giving it to trades to do on site. So in our heads, those two things are always in lockstep. As you started to get more sophisticated in terms of how you built things, the digital tools you use to support that way of working had to move. So we're definitely seeing, I think, more and more people are realizing that now. Or to put it another way, if you've made all the effort to, coordinate a BIM model and create this sort of perfect representation of a building, to then split it back down into thousands of drawings and give to people on site feels like a bit of a backward step. So I think people are working out how to leverage things they've already done. But we're now starting to see things like, in some cases, we take the models or the files from our models and we send them straight to a robot to weld them. There's obviously people are sort of 3D printing things direct off models. So again, the technology is starting to make it easier to really translate a digital thing directly into a physical thing and miss out all the normal steps of drawing it, handing it to someone, they measure it and all those things. So we're starting to see, as a way of working, it's progressing, but also like it's really happening for real now with these sorts of technologies.
It's exciting, right?
Yeah, if we can, there's like anything, there's loads of these technologies that I think will fall by the wayside. There's loads of sort of people trying lots of different things, and there's lots of noise that will settle down. But there's more and more use cases now where people are really starting to use the digital bit to drive physical outcomes. My guess is we've done projects, things like the image that's behind us is the Crossrail cladding for some of the Crossrail stations, or Elizabeth Line in London. That was a very digital. We were leveraging point cloud surveys, generative design, 3D printing, CNC laser cutting of components, on-site telemetry. It would be very, very hard to do that physically without using some of the digital tools. And I think we'll see more of that. We'll see physical things that would be impossible to build without it being generated digitally in some form. And I think that's an exciting thing of what is that new form of architecture? What's that new aesthetic that can only be done because of the digital tools? And I think that's an exciting space we could get into.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just said, generative design, 3D printing, if we look at a BIM, all of these things. Most people aren't even using one, let alone all of them like you guys are using to build things that otherwise could not be built physically on site, human, what have you. So, I mean, that's just incredible to me that you have put together such a team of robust people, Bryden Woods, that is, and you're part of that team to really look at the built environment, to take it to that next level. So super cool. All right, listen, everybody, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So get your tweets on. If you're not out there tweeting, go and find Jaimie Johnston, go and find Bryden Woods. Make sure you hit that like and follow. But before you do any of that, make sure you go to the Dave Cooper Live channel and hit that like, follow, and ring that little bell. And we want to thank all of you. If you're joining us live right now, please let us know who you are. If you're in the audience, give us a like, a share, and let us know where you're joining from today. And if you're watching this after the show has already been live, well, we appreciate you as well. If you put a comment in, we will get back to you. So, all right, Jaimie, let's keep this conversation rolling. Optimizing the value of a platform's approach. What is the platform's approach, and what are the benefits?
So the best way of explaining it is probably IKEA. So everyone already knows the IKEA system. So regardless of what you're making, what bit of furniture in what room of the house, like, the interfaces are always the same, the book's always the same, the tools are always the same. So IKEA's done a brilliant job of taking all furniture and boiling it down to a limited number of components and process. And it means that suddenly everyone can make furniture. So platforms is our attempt to do that for the built environment. So we've been developing lots of different industrialized construction systems for lots of different public, private sector clients over the years, but it's happening too slowly. So we started saying, actually, what are the things we've learned that are common across all of these clients? Is there a sort of common set of components or suite of approaches that we could crystallize and turn into a multi-purpose kit of parts that we could build almost anything with? So whereas I think a lot of the industry has been trying to look for why their sector is special and different, why their project is special and different, why their discipline is special, we started saying, if you looked for commonality across the built environment, you'd probably find loads. And we've done that exercise, certainly in the public sector in the UK, and found that if you try and look for commonality, you see loads of things in terms of spans, for instance, that are common across hospitals and schools and apartments. From that, you can derive a kit of parts. And if you're using them across sector, suddenly you're using them in the sorts of numbers manufacturing likes, And that's how you start to make the shift from every project being a prototype to projects being like IKEA and all the benefits it's had in terms of productivity and de-skilling of construction, all of those sorts of things.
So you analyze several different building types, which, there's tons of hospitals, there's tons of office buildings, there's a ton of commercial spaces out there, whatever the case is. You use the data that you collect from that on the spans, the loads, the size of the rooms, the size of the ER facility and emergency rooms, all that stuff. And that allows you to actually build, I guess, the kit of parts that can optimize for several different types of construction projects that are, done everywhere. And that's what you're saying. So you're using all that data and you're pulling existing data that's already out there to come up with an optimized solution to actually do the platform's approach. I love it.
Yes, we hypothesized it with the UK government a number of years ago and said, I bet the spans across a load of these things are quite similar. For instance, a couple of years ago, actually, via the Construction Innovation Hub, I think you spoke to Trudy in one of these podcasts, one of these streams a while ago. We were actually given access to £50 billion worth of cross-government departmental pipeline data and did the proper analysis. And again, it was the data that kind of proved this point that you can actually formally identify all this commonality. But one of the things, for instance, we found is if you had a set of components that did an 8-meter span very effectively, about 35%, 35 billion worth of the pipeline, 70% of it could be delivered one kit of parts. And you go, that's just in the UK, just in the public sector. So you can imagine the sorts of efficiencies, economies of scale, and all of the manufacturing type benefits that we could get our hands on if we did that formally. And we've seen other benefits. So because each of the components, we've got a limited number of components we use, they form part of a digital library. You can automate their configuration because they know how they talk to each other, which is speeding up the design process. We can laser cut the components because we use them again and again. We can automate the assembly processes. So it's really unlocking all of these things that we've talked about that manufacturing does that construction doesn't. This, we think, is could be the way that we unlock all of those at massive scale. And if it works in the UK, there's no reason it wouldn't work globally as an initiative.
Yeah, sure. And how far out are you from knowing if it works in the UK well?
So you'll see when you come to London, we've got the first of we've built loads of different projects with variants of this in the past. The office project you're going to see, the Forge for Landsec, is the first time we've brought all of this stuff together. But it's already showing, massive productivity gains. It's showing how to apply automation on site. We're using robotics. We're using laser cutting. It's dramatically reducing carbon and time. So there's already massive benefits just on the first project, just for one client. If you multiply that by the scale of the UK pipeline and beyond, it's really given us an insight into how we could properly shift the needle on construction.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the Forge, hopefully we'll be able to bring you some information on that. That is by far one of the coolest projects, Jaimie, and I say that honestly. I was watching your presentation at Advancing Prefab, and just the way that they were hanging their steel and lifting the sections, using the robots on the job site. It wasn't even all in the factory, right? The way they were pulling parts together. I mean, there was some really cool stuff that was happening on how it all came together, locked in place, which I hope we can share that with everybody when we come over to visit you here in another week and a half.
We're actually using combi lifts. So one of your sponsors, we had combi lifts that we were using to lift the components. So normally they're used in distribution sheds. We took ones that were normally used in distribution sheds, brought them onto site and used that to move the components around. So again, we're just taking technology that already exists from an adjacent sector, putting it on site and going, imagine it's a construction site. It turns out not some racking with a load of shelving in it, but it's the same principle. So we're just taking technology from all over the place and starting to bring it together now
and use it efficiently on the job site and safely. And that's really what's cool. But just how that all came together, I can't wait to talk about it and show people. So, all right, let's talk about it. The integrated project delivery and driving productivity. What is it and how is it driving industrialized construction?
So one of the things that we've seen for years is that a huge blocker to this sort of move into industrialized construction is that the way we buy projects, so the way clients transfer risk to a general contractor who transfers the risk down the supply chain until it reaches the person who's least able to deal with it. That's a huge problem. the way people are incentivized to deliver projects is not necessarily aligned across the entire delivery space. So IPD is a model where everyone shares the risk and everyone's incentivized to help everyone else on the project. So rather than just trying to do your package, run away and get off site as quickly as possible, you're incentivized to do things in your package that benefit those that follow you, which is a complete anathema to normal construction. So it seems to be a model where that's sort of having a much more mature attitude to risk, working more collaboratively to make the project a success rather than your specific part of the project. That seems to be one of the things which is going to unlock this. So on the Forge, for instance, it was construction management, we call it in the UK. So Landsec were placing orders directly with the supply chain and having a very direct sort of supply chain conversation. The general contractor was in more of a kind of site setup, logistics, managing the site sort of role, but enabling that, very close conversation between the client and the manufacturers who actually do the work. So that sort of transparency and that sort of much more grown-up attitude to risk is one of the things that we need to get our heads around. So part of it is the technology. The other part is this sort of cultural shift we need to make.
Love it. All right, listen, everybody, we're going to go to a couple comments here. When we come back from the comments, we're going to be talking about success and failures, and we're going to try to understand why some are excelling, and taking it to the next level, and others are really struggling out there. But first, why don't we go to say hello to a few people that I'm sure we're going to see overseas as well. Hey, Buzz Holitzer, what's happening? He says, thumbs up. Good to see you, Buzz. No stranger to danger. We got Joel Hutchins in the house. Afternoon, Dave Cooper. He says, I'll see you over there. I will be presenting at NXT. What is BLD? NXT Build. Also, G-Day, Jaimie Johnston, MBE. Love the sound of this approach. Almost sounds familiar. Oh, and by the way, Jaimie, we're going to ask you what MBE stands for, so stick around for that. I mean, we're talking about cool kids on the block. Jaimie is definitely reaching the height of the cool kid on the block after you find out what MBE stands for. Super neat stuff. We got Eric Scott out there as well. Great information. Happy to be here. Eric Scott with Biz Graphics, Colorado. And Ryan Geldar, looks like we got a long hair one and a question maybe. Hi, Jaimie. If we have the client's understanding that standardization is beneficial to them for all of the reasons you have mentioned, where do you think this is the message? Where do you think the message is diluted or lost as it moves through the supply chain to delivery? Surely this dilution means a more expensive, longer, and more wasteful process.
Shall I pick up on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so where we've seen this working, it's always been driven by clients. So early in the day in our careers, British Airports Authorities, Heathrow Gatwick Airport, where the client was very invested in delivering this. We've done projects for GlaxoSmithKline where they've recognized that kind of risk transfer doesn't work for them. So if a facility is late, they can be losing millions of dollars a day, or people aren't getting life-extending drugs and things. So it's tended to be where clients have recognized that they have a part to play and have ensured that the message doesn't get diluted, because that sort of passes all the way through. And it's why things like I mentioned, the CM approach for Landsec, it's why Landsec wanted to be able to talk more directly to the supply chain to make sure the supply chain understands. So you're absolutely right. The kind of current way of working, or traditional way of working, where design gets handed to a general contractor, they split it into thousands of packages, they pass that down to the supply chain, who pass that down to their sub-supply chain, and there's no link, there's no voice of the customer being transmitted. Yeah, that's where it goes wrong. That's traditional construction, and the more expensive sort of version. Where it works is where we have that persistent voice to the customer, and where we're able to talk all the way through the supply chain and make sure that these things get put all the way through. We would typically do a much more integrated design. We very often prototype things ourselves. So by the time the supply chain come on it, we're saying, it's like this, we've made one, you can see what we did here. How can you help us make that better? Or if I handed this over, what would you do with it? And so it's much, you're absolutely right. If we don't engage the supply chain, it does get diluted. But if you do, you find there's tons of innovation just waiting to bubble up. But very often it's prevented by all these layers above them. They go, oh, I wish I'd had access to the client because I could have done a much better job. We're just trying to close that spark gap.
Yeah, appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you for the question. Oh, we got Ben Hershey in the house as well, Forward Solutions Group. That's another one of our sponsors. If you don't know Ben, you should. Afternoon, Dave, Jennifer. As always, another great show. Thank you, Jaimie, for this valuable information today. Many folks get paralyzed with so much data, but used in the right way, we can deliver superior designs. Ben is no stranger to the manufacturing world. He helps manufacturers all around the world with his team. So it's great to always see Ben in. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we've done this in a number of sectors now for different clients. What we found is that if you analyze a whole raft of projects, historic projects, very often the designers all ended up with something very similar in terms of spaces and adjacencies and floor to floor heights and things, but they burned through a load of fee and spent a load of time getting there. Yeah. So very often we're not trying to change the way people design, we're just trying to get them there quicker. Because what we found is actually, if I could tell you what where you're going to end up, and by the way, the data says that this is where you're going to end up, but I can fast track that journey. You could spend more time doing the interesting bits of design. So you could be doing much more in terms of massing and placing and energy balance and pedestrian movement. So what we're trying to do through this approach is give designers more time to do the value-adding, creatively challenging, interesting stuff, and less of the kind of drudgery and the documentation, and find out they've ended up with the same floor-to-floor heights and spans that people in their sector have always ended up with. So if anything, it allows you to do more and better design is definitely something we're interested in.
I love it. More and better designed and optimizing the process all at the same time, which is great. Ryan says, great answer. Appreciated. Thank you. So super cool. All right, Jaimie, before we get into this next question, let's just ask it. MBE. I've never seen the title MBE. Come on, tell the world what MBE is. I was super excited to hear this. So go ahead.
So it's Member of the Order of the British Empire. So twice a year, our Queen, on her official birthday and at New Year's, gives out honours to people. So it's when you get, people get knighted, they become Sir whatever, people become Baron, Dame. So it's that sort of suite of honours that are bestowed on people. So yeah, last summer in the birthday honours, I was lucky enough to be put forward and recommended to get an MBE for my work in the 10 years I've spent trying to transform construction with government. So yeah, incredibly proud, because not many people in construction get them. So yeah, my kids were over. I didn't think my kids would be that excited until they realised like the England football captain's got an MBE, Ed Sheeran's got an MBE. So they're going, all right, this is okay. This is good. This is
yeah. It's not just good. It's amazing. It's not very many people have that opportunity. So congratulations. I guess we'll see Jedi after your name next, right? Jedi Master. Things will start floating. You won't need robots anymore. You'll just float everything there. I think it's amazing. So super, super cool. Thank you for that. All right, let's get back into this. Let's talk about success and failures. Why are some expanding globally, such as Bryden Woods and others, experience massive setbacks and failures?
I would say we've made loads of mistakes. We've learned everything the hard way. As I say, we've been doing this for 25, 26 years now. And definitely when we started on this journey, no one else was particularly interested. It definitely wasn't. It's like being HD ready for like 20 years, getting ready for the broadcasting. So I think if we're having any success now, it's simply because we've got more scars on our backs than others, and which is why we're trying to share all the stuff we're doing. We publish everything, we open source a lot of stuff. There is definitely, I can't comment on this because I don't know enough about it, but one of the things that people often talk about is Katera, for instance.
Sure.
Or there's a company, Urban Splash, who are one of the very advanced, very sophisticated modular manufacturers here that went bust a couple months ago. I can't tell you enough about why specifically that happened. It does feel like there's the effort or the money they're required to set up a factory, develop a product, gear yourself up. It's a large amount of money needed to get into that space. And then if you don't have a sustained pipeline, it's very hard to keep that going. And we found that we ran our own factory for a number of years. It's very volatile. So it's one of the reasons that we've stepped into this platforms approach and tried to make things more granular to lower the barrier of entry and say, well, actually, I don't need you to set up a factory. I can use existing capacity capability of the market to make these small components. I don't need you to make an entire structural system. I just need you to make these components that will get put together. So it was partly a reaction to, certainly in the UK, there's been a number of modular manufacturers that have gone bust over the years. And our own experience of running a factory, knowing how hard that is, we're saying, actually, if we could make things more granular, potentially make the supply chain more resilient, more robust, more interdependent, that might be one of the things that would unlock this. But yeah, I don't know enough about those two specific firms and why they went down. But it was definitely part of that thinking was why we started getting into the platform space.
And what makes Bryden Woods so successful? Like, what do you think is the one driver? If there's other companies out there looking to emulate Bryden Woods or, be successful and be expanding and not one of the other ones going the other direction, what would be that one thing you would say to look at in your business?
So we had one of our early things we used to talk about was if we just relentlessly pursued value for clients, well, I bet that's a thing. I bet people would come back. So we've done some very counterintuitive things over the years. We've invested in technology that didn't go anywhere. We've developed systems that didn't get scaled up. We've invested in our own prototyping facility. We've done some commercially very risky things, but we always thought if we can just keep adding value to clients, I bet they'll come back. So we've generally tried to, in the design space, say automate ourselves out of a job by learning how the client works, learning how to codify their rules, turning that into a configurator, and then making it easier for them even to configure their own building. So on one sense, people think that's crazy. Why would you automate yourselves out of a job? But we do it for companies like GlaxoSmithKline. Again, it's GlaxoSmithKline. They've probably got some more interesting high-value problems to solve, and they'll probably come back because they like the way we work. So that's definitely been a model. And I think we've just pursued that sort of idea. So we don't protect things we do. We publish quite a lot of stuff we do. We've never tried to patent anything, for instance. And again, that seems counterintuitive. People wonder why we're not trying to monetize things. We're going, well, if we open source things, for instance, and a client has a choice to go to the people who invented it or the people who didn't, they might well come to us and say, well, that's quite interesting, but can you do this with it or do a version of it? So, we've just stayed true to that vision. And it seems to be, well, touch wood, seems to be working.
We've seen it over and over, Jaimie, on this show, and collaboration and sharing technology and ideas is how we're all going to grow faster and to move this industry forward. Again, when you're still only 4 or 5% of the market, and you've been that way for 20 years, and more, it's the only way to go forward. There's we need to share how we do this, and it'll help everybody. It'll help us build better. It'll help us help with sustainability and affordability and all those other great things if we pull great minds together. So very cool. Appreciate that. Al is out there tuning us in. He says sub-assemblies. Hey, Al, good to see you, my friend. And Joel Hutchins says leverage widely available digital fabrication, sophisticated, localized assembly. So always a pleasure, Joel. All right. What's next, Jaimie? We're coming over. We're going to visit you. I've been trying to talk Jaimie into getting on a one wheel or electric skateboard so we could zip around town, but he already told me it's a bit dangerous on a bicycle, so he has to be careful what he does. But what's next? What can we expect when we come to visit you over at Bryden Woods?
So we're going to take you around the offices. We're going to show you how we work. We'll probably show you examples of some of the digital configurators we've developed. We'll show you examples of projects. We can go into, I was thinking about this the other day, we could take you into Elizabeth Line. You could see some of the cladding that's behind you on the image now for real. And we're going to try and get you into the forge so you can see platforms in action and actually see the output of all of this work, the automation, the generative design, all of those tools coming together. So you can see how the digital has transformed into the physical. So yeah, very excited to actually take you around and show you some of this stuff. It's one thing me talking about it, but obviously it's quite powerful to see it in real life.
We're going to have to get some t-shirts. Let's transform the digital into physical, right?
Yeah.
It's a good slogan. Let's use the digital, using all that data you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah, and it's fascinating the number of things that have converged in terms of the manufacturing technology coming into construction, the use of digital, the use of data, all of these things. We're definitely definitely feels like we're coming to a point where we were talking about it earlier. It doesn't matter which way you're coming at this, whether it's a productivity thing that's driving it, or a sustainability is very high in the UK, or it's a market capacity. Everyone's ending up in the same place. And that, I think, is quite interesting itself, that whichever route you choose into this transforming construction, you end up broadly in the same place. And you go, well, that tells you something that, there's maybe some fundamental truth to some of these things that people should be embracing now and starting to leverage. And you look at, we've talked about this before, you look at, population growth over the next 20, 30 years, there's so much work to go after. We don't have to have this protectionist thing anymore. There's so much work that actually the only chance we've got to keep up is to start sharing, as you say, start collaborating, start jointly moving the industry forwards rather than trying to protect our own little corner.
It's the only way forward. That's the way I'm seeing it. And, people like yourself, Howick, that's why we're coming over. Steel Horizons, they're bringing industry experts together to have real conversation to move this forward. And we're fortunate enough to be speaking over there. And Jaimie, you're going to be there, and so many others. So super excited for that. And hey, go to their website, Howick, and Steel Horizons, and sign up. See if there's room available for you. It is an invite only type event, so hopefully there is. But if not, we are going to bring you all the live action and recorded action because of the time zone difference. And the same thing from Bryden Woods. We're going to do a lot of recorded stuff. So, Jaimie, is there anything that I did not touch on? Is there anything you want to share? Did I miss anything? Now's your chance.
No, I think we covered everything. That's probably that's probably enough from me for now. I guess there's probably enough. But yeah, do look at the website. There's loads of resources on there. We've published tons of stuff on platforms. There's case studies on the Forge. You can download and play with some of our apps that we've developed. So there's tons of content there you can have a go at. Love it. Buzz says the new one wheel is wicked good. So, all right, listen, that's the show. I'm not to be trusted on less than 4 wheels. Oh, nothing less than 4 wheels. That's it. Yeah, it's probably smart. I'd probably follow your lead. All right, everybody, listen, thank you so much for tuning in today. Jaimie, thank you so much for joining us out there. We got some big shows coming up. Join us Wednesday, 1 o'clock, and then again Friday, BS Friday. Saturday, I'm probably going to miss you. I'll be flying to London, but otherwise, we will see you in a couple days. Jaimie, appreciate you, man. We look forward to getting together with you. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back to you right after the outro. And for the rest of you out there, make sure you follow Jaimie on social media. Follow Bryden Woods. Hit that like and share button one more time, and make sure you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. So, thanks for listening.